Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, right? And you realize that the map you've used your entire life to navigate the world, the map that tells you what is right, what is wrong, and, what the ultimate point of everything is suddenly just completely blank.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like all the roads you thought led to a guaranteed destination just end in this vast, terrifying, empty space.
Exactly. And in the 1880s, Friedrich Nietzsche looked at the modern world and realized humanity was about to drive right off the edge of that exact map.
He really did. It's like if traditional morality is the gravity keeping human civilization anchored to the earth, Nietzsche saw that we were entering a state of zero gravity.
Which, sounds freeing at first,
Yeah.
like, hey, I can float, I can go anywhere.
Right. But without gravity, human muscles atrophy. The structure degrades. And that is the absolute loss of certainty he was trying to warn us about. It's incredibly unsettling because human psychology fundamentally relies on those maps.
Yeah, we need our struggles to be categorized. We need to believe there's a guaranteed payoff for our suffering. But what if losing that map, losing that gravity, is actually the only way to finally chart your own course? Today, we are taking a deep dive into one of the most famous, most poetic, and honestly, undeniably most misunderstood philosophical works ever written, Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spake Zarathustra.
It is a truly remarkable, monumental piece of literature.
It really is. And our mission for you today is to unpack all of this. We're going to explore a central burning question. How do you find meaning when the rules just disappear?
And to really grasp what Nietzsche is doing here, we have to look at the context provided by his sister's historical notes in our sources. Because, well, this isn't a dry academic textbook.
No, not at all. You aren't going to find standard logical proofs here, right?
Right. It's a symbolic, deeply personal, almost prophetic narrative. Nietzsche wrote it during this intensely ecstatic period of his life in the 1880s.
Yeah, he was wandering around, right?
Exactly. He was traveling through places like Rapallo, Rome, and Nice. And he was often writing in these furious bursts of inspiration while hiking over hills and walking along the sea. He felt like he was receiving this text, not just writing it.
That's fascinating. And he chose a very specific historical figure to be his mouthpiece, Zarathustra, identifying him with the ancient Persian prophet.
He did.
But wait, this is a philosophy that essentially tears down traditional religion. Why choose an ancient religious figure to deliver that message?
It's a deliberate, almost surgical irony on Nietzsche's part. I mean, historically, the Persian prophet Zarathustra was the very first person to frame the universe as a cosmic war between good and evil.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he created the concept of morality as a metaphysical force, meaning morality wasn't just a list of human rules, it was woven into the very fabric of reality itself.
Right, so Nietzsche's logic was that since Zarathustra created this massive, portentous error of objective morality, he should be the very first to recognize its flaws.
Exactly. He built the map, so his intellectual integrity requires him to be the one to burn it.
He has to overcome his own creation through absolute truthfulness, which actually brings us to the inciting incident of the book.
Yeah, the opening is so striking.
It is. So Zarathustra leaves his home and his lake at age 30, and he spends 10 years isolated in the mountains, enriching his spirit. But eventually he decides he needs to share his wisdom.
He has to come back down to mankind.
Right. He comes down, steps into a town square where people are waiting to see a rope dancer, and drops a philosophical bombshell that is literally still echoing today. He declares, God is dead.
Which remains one of the most shocking declarations in all of human thought.
So what does this all mean? I mean, a society is suddenly losing its universal operating system.
Well, we need to look at the mechanism behind it. The old god that Zarathustra talks about is described later in the text as a grim, jealous god.
Yeah, and a god who ultimately suffocated from his own all too great pity for man.
Exactly. What Nietzsche means is that the idea of God has lost its power over humanity's collective mind. The Enlightenment, the rise of science, the shift in how we view the physical world, all of this made the old certainty impossible to maintain.
But I have to push back here, because in the story, the people in the town square don't immediately riot.
No, they don't.
They don't fall to their knees in despair. They actually laugh at him. They think he's crazy. So if gravity just turned off, why aren't people floating away? How does a society continue to function if the operating system has been unplugged?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's because of momentum. The battery is completely drained, but the machine is still spinning.
Oh, that makes sense.
The people in the marketplace haven't fully realized the consequences of what has happened. They are still acting out traditional morality, being good, being charitable, seeking truth, without realizing the metaphysical foundation for those actions is just gone.
So Nietzsche is illustrating a profound crisis of a society running on fumes.
Yes. And when those fumes run out, humanity faces a dangerous, terrifying void.
And nature abhors a vacuum. If there is no higher divine purpose to human life, what takes its place?
This is where Zarathustra introduces a really chilling concept. He warns that this void creates a specific type of human being, something he calls the last man.
And honestly, looking at our modern reality, this is where Nietzsche sounds less like a philosopher and more like a time traveler.
He really does. The last man is what happens when a society loses its drive for greatness, its capacity for deep suffering, and replaces it entirely with a desire for absolute comfort.
Right. Zarathustra says they have left the regions where it was hard to live.
Yes, they want warmth. They have a little poison for pleasant dreams and a little poison for a pleasant death.
Think about what that means mechanically for human psychology. An absence of struggle actually leads to this sort of societal rot. The text says the last man blinks, meaning he is drowsy, fundamentally uncurious, and completely satisfied with a mediocre, painless existence.
Exactly. The last man thinks he has invented happiness because his life is entirely frictionless.
No great wars of the spirit.
Right. No devastating tragedies, but also no soaring triumphs. Just a lukewarm collective numbing. And Zarathustra finds the last man deeply, viscerally contemptible.
Because a frictionless life isn't really a human life at all. It's the slow death of our potential.
Precisely. So if the old values are dead and becoming this drowsy, comfortable last man is the ultimate danger, Zarathustra has to offer a solution.
And he does. He tells the crowd, I teach you the Superman. Man is something that is to be surpassed. He declares that the Superman, or Übermensch, shall be the meaning of the earth.
And he uses a very powerful analogy here. He says humanity is a rope fastened over an abyss.
Yeah, we are a bridge, a transition, rather than a final destination.
Exactly. It's a call to view human existence not as a completed project, but as a continuous act of overcoming.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I have a critical pushback.
Yeah.
The term Superman carries a massive amount of historical and cultural baggage.
Oh, absolutely. It's heavily loaded.
It sounds like a biological upgrade.
Yeah.
Is this some kind of Darwinian evolution thing where we grow extra brains and weed out the weak? Or is it just a philosophical excuse for arrogant people to do whatever they want without consequences?
I'm so glad you brought that up because that is the most common and historically the most catastrophic misunderstanding of Nietzsche's work.
Really? So he didn't mean it biologically?
Not at all. The source notes from his sister specifically and aggressively correct this. Nietzsche absolutely did not mean a Darwinian new species.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He wasn't talking about biological evolution. The Superman represents what he called the most thoroughly well-constituted type of human.
So it's an internal psychological upgrade.
It is, but it's more violent than just an upgrade. You aren't just downloading new software, you are actively destroying the hardware of your old conscience.
Right, right.
It's a spiritual goal for individuals who are willing to look directly into that terrifying void left by the death of God, refuse the comfortable numbness of the last man, and adopt new values.
They have to take on the agonizing responsibility of becoming active creators rather than passive receivers of values.
Exactly. But Zarathustra points out that society absolutely hates creators. He says the people who will fight the Superman the hardest are the very people we currently call the good and just.
Well, yes. He is absolutely scathing in his critique of the good and just. He says they actually crucify the future.
Because they cannot create anything new. They only fiercely defend the old tables of values.
Because if someone comes along and proves that new values can be created, it invalidates the obedience of the good and just, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It proves their lifelong submission wasn't some cosmic necessity, it was just a choice.
That's exactly it. To the good and just, anyone who creates a new value is a destroyer. They are a threat to the established order that must be neutralized.
So to become the Superman, you have to completely bypass that immense societal pressure to conform.
Which is incredibly difficult.
Right. Which brings us to the fundamental question of how. It's easy to say we should bypass old programming, but the human brain is wired for conformity. We are social creatures.
We are.
So how did Nietzsche think we could actually rewire ourselves against our own nature?
Well, he provides an allegorical map for this psychological growth, and it is honestly one of the most vivid images in the entire book.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The three metamorphoses of the spirit.
Yes. It's a beautiful sequence. Zarathustra says the spirit must first become a camel, Then the camel must become a lion, and the lion must at last become a child.
Let's ground this in reality for you listening, starting with the camel. The camel is strong, and it willingly kneels down to take on heavy burdens. It asks, what is the heaviest thing?
Right, which represents the human spirit taking on all the weight of traditional morality, all the duties, all the thou shalts of society.
Think about the heaviest thou shalt in your life right now. Is it the expectation to take on massive debt for a specific degree? To climb a corporate ladder you hate?
Or to be the perfect parent according to social media.
Exactly. That suffocating weight you feel is exactly what Nietzsche means by the camel carrying the burdens of the past into the lonely desert.
But it is a necessary phase. The camel represents discipline, learning, and reverence. You cannot overcome a culture if you haven't first fully absorbed it and carried its weight.
That makes sense. But the camel cannot stay a camel forever, or it will simply collapse and die in the desert under the weight of other people's expectations.
Precisely. So in the loneliest desert, the second metamorphosis happens. The camel transforms into a lion.
And the lion wants to capture freedom and be lord in its own desert. It battles a great dragon covered in glittering golden scales.
And on every single scale is written a societal rule. Thou shalt.
So what does the lion do? The lion roars a holy no. It rebels. It rejects the old values to win its freedom.
The lion is the mechanism of pure defiance. It slays the dragon of societal expectations.
It shatters the false ceiling. But, and here's a sharp question for you, why end with a child? Isn't going from a fierce lion that slays dragons to a little child a massive regression into weakness?
What's fascinating here is it's not regression at all. It's a shift in the mechanism of action. The lion is powerful, yes. The lion can destroy old values,
Right.
but the lion cannot create new ones.
Oh, because the psychology of a rebel is still entirely defined by the thing they are fighting against.
Exactly. Their no is powerful, but it is reactive. They are still tied to the dragon, just in opposition to it.
So to truly create, you need the third metamorphosis.
Yes, the child. The child represents innocence and forgetting, a new beginning. Zarathustra calls the child a self-rolling wheel and a first movement.
Because a child at play doesn't play out of resentment for the rules of adults. A child plays out of pure, spontaneous joy.
Exactly. And most importantly, while the lion casts the child says a holy yay to life.
The holy yay, a pure, unburdened affirmation of existence. The game of creating requires this.
It does. The child has won its own world. But maintaining this pure affirmation of life is the hardest task a human being can undertake.
Because life isn't just a blank map. It's a map filled with profound suffering, cruelty, and disappointment.
And Zarathustra encounters all of it. As he wanders the earth, he meets characters who represent the deep neuroses of humanity.
Right, like the ugliest man.
Yes, who represents the deep shame and physical ugliness of existence, the parts of humanity we want to hide.
Or the out-of-work pope who is grieving the death of the old god and the loss of his life's purpose. It's easy to say yes to life when you are healthy and inspired.
But it's incredibly hard to say yes when you're looking into the eyes of the ugliest man, or when you are experiencing deep trauma yourself.
And that is where Zarathustra faces his ultimate test, the absolute peak of his philosophy. He realizes his destiny is to be the teacher of what he calls the eternal return, or the eternal recurrence.
Yes, the ultimate test of self-overcoming.
The idea that time is a circle. Everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen will repeat exactly as it is, down to the smallest detail, over and over again, for all eternity.
Every joy, but also every single tear.
But wait, this idea that time is a circle and everything repeats, doesn't that sound like an absolute nightmare, especially for anyone who has suffered?
This raises an important question, and it is exactly why the text calls this idea Zarathustra's greatest danger and infirmity.
It physically sickens him.
He gags at the thought, because he realizes that if time is a circle, it doesn't just mean his own pain returns, it means the last man returns. The complacency, the ugliest man, all the things he despises will return eternally.
How does anyone possibly overcome that level of disgust?
Through the mechanism of radical affirmation. To accept the eternal return means you must love your life, your choices, and the earth so completely that you say, once more, to the festival of life.
You justify all the perishableness and the pain.
Exactly. You have to find a way to look at the totality of existence and say, yes, it is the absolute opposite of what Zarathustra calls the preachers of death.
The preachers of death are those who despise the physical body, who despise the earth and who preach desistance from life.
Right, they want to escape to some other perfect world, whether that's a religious afterlife or some utopian future.
Zarathustra rejects all of that. He says the meaning is here, in the dirt, in the struggle, in the joy.
You must love the earth so fiercely that you want it for eternity.
It's an impossibly high bar, but it's a breathtaking vision of human potential. And I think it really brings us to why Thus Spake Zarathustra remains both massively influential and notoriously difficult to understand.
It really is.
It is written entirely in this poetic, metaphorical language that requires you to actively interpret it. It refuses to hand you easy answers.
No, it doesn't. Take the chapter on the bite of the adder, for instance. Zarathustra falls asleep and is bitten by a poisonous snake.
Right. And when he wakes up, instead of killing the snake, he tells it to take its poison back because he isn't rich enough to be given such a gift.
Which is such a bizarre reaction. He teaches that if you have an enemy, you shouldn't return good for evil, like traditional morality dictates, because turning the other cheek would just humiliate them.
It's a subtle form of arrogance.
Exactly. He says you should instead prove that their hostility actually did you a favor.
Or when he tells his disciples to take his goal and throw the golden ball to each other, he constantly uses these rich symbols that just leave the text wide open to many interpretations.
But that ambiguity is its greatest strength. Nietzsche boldly shatters the false ceiling of conventional morality. He forces us to look up into the terrifying open sky.
He is both admired and criticized for exactly the same reason. He meticulously tears down the old house, but he absolutely refuses to give us a blueprint for the new one.
He leaves us with the dizzying task of creating our own values.
He gives us the blank map. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We live in an era of unprecedented information overload, where cultural norms are shifting faster than we can even process them.
Zarathustra's challenge is arguably more relevant today than it was in the 1880s. It is a profound warning to critically examine the heavy burdens you carry, to avoid becoming the complacent last man.
To ask yourself, what are the thou shalts weighing down your camel? Whose expectations are you carrying into the desert?
And it is a challenge to actively create meaning in your own life, rather than waiting for society or an algorithm to hand it to you.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over today. Building on the concept of the eternal return. Imagine if you were told tonight that you would have to live this exact day and your exact life over and over for eternity.
Every single detail.
Would that thought crush you, or would you celebrate it? And if it would crush you, what's the one thing you need to change tomorrow so you can finally say yes to your own life?